Hello and welcome to the Rainbow Activation Code. I'm Justine Serebrin and I'm so excited to have you all here. I'm here today with Magenta Pixie, who channels the White Wing Collective Consciousness of Nine. I'm so excited to have you, Magenta. I'm going to read a little bio about you to share with everyone before we get started, okay? So, Magenta Pixie has been in communication with a collective group of light beings or a higher aspect of self since 1993. She affectionately refers to these beings as the White Wing Collective Consciousness of Nine, or simply the Nine. Regular meditation and a journey of synchronicity within her own life led to this awakening and connection. Magenta releases her messages from the Nine in video form on YouTube. Since releasing her first message in 2008, she has received and attracted over 50,000 subscribers. It's amazing. She has worked individually with clients all over the world and is the author of Masters of the Matrix and Divine Architecture and the Starseed Template, channeled books teaching individuals, particularly star seeds and light workers, to find their own sovereignty through the understanding of their own energy system. Her passion is helping people move through trauma, embrace the enlightenment and ascension path, and to find their own connection with creativity, divinity, and joy. I'm Justine Serebrin, and I'm here with Magenta Pixie.
Hello. Okay, well, I guess what I do really is I'm an individual who has expanded this, I guess, higher level of consciousness we all have. Someone who's able to balance the subconscious with the conscious and use more of the brain, or use more of the DNA, if you like, and to communicate from an aspect that has a wider periphery or a wider perspective. And that process is known sort of in the New Age community and the Lightworker community as channeling. And that is how it presents. So that aspect of me, that aspect that has a wider periphery, is also an entity in its own right. Although it's part of me and it's part of my subconscious mind, if you like, it's an entity. It is an energy construct in its own right, and that construct presents to me as a group of beings. You could call them angels or extraterrestrials or light beings, rainbow beings, plasma beings, whatever you want to call them. It's all the same thing. I didn't know any of this when I first started to talk to them. They taught me all this, and they taught me about who and what they are. They didn't present with a name. I gave them a name. There were 9 of these beings. They had white wings, and I knew that they were a collective consciousness. So I said to them, are you happy to be called the white-winged collective consciousness of 9? And they agreed that that was a good name for them and suited them. So that's who and what I communicate with.
Wonderful. Do you see, so you said you see the wings. Is there anything else that you see or feel from that?
Yes, so I see them with clairvoyant vision or remote viewing, or whatever word you want to use to describe that sort of inner sight or psychic sight. So I see what they look like. When they first presented to me, they were white light beings with wings that I recognized as wings. Sometimes these wings would just look like sort of light in the shape of wings. Other times they would actually be big white feathered wings, like giant birds' wings. They presented with human faces, mostly male human faces, but sometimes, especially if I was feeling insecure or down or needed some kind of extra comfort, one being would step forward, and then she would be female and have a female face and long white hair. And then sometimes they had faces that were like birds, with birds' beaks, but still had eyes. And then after a while of communicating with them in that form, I asked them, well, they spoke to me about their true form. So I was then aware that the form they presented to me was not their true form. So I asked them if they could show me their true form. And they explained that whilst it was very difficult to show me their true form, as their true form is kind of encompasses many dimensional presentations, and in one respect their true form is everything, they could show me the nearest form to their true essence, if you like. So I would see the universe, the cosmos, the stars, and then I would see simply sacred geometric presentations and forms and structures, and I would see light and sound, and I would feel them, which presented, the feeling was very much like a very powerful merge between unconditional love and light. And I'm aware that when I feel them at that level of light and love, I'm only able to feel about 10% of the brilliance of that light and the essence of that love, because the power of that is beyond my ability to perceive in human form. So
wow. When you feel a transmission coming, do you feel a transmission coming, or does it feel like something you consciously ask to receive the download, or do you feel sort of like okay, it's coming on, I need to prepare myself and to receive a message? Is there any part of that?
Yes, it's both of those. So sometimes their presentation just appears within my energy field. I mean, it's different now because I've learned to structure it and control it and work with it. When it happened in the early days, I couldn't shut it off, I couldn't open it up, I couldn't call upon it or close it down. So the timing was way off, and we both had to learn, both me and the 9 had to learn together how to work with these different dimensional states, you know, them turning up for a chat at 3 in the morning when I'm exhausted, or when I'm in the middle of talking to someone else, or when I'm going shopping, so we had to learn, and I had to learn to work with control within that, and I do that now. So sometimes they will come to me, but they come to me at very appropriate times when I'm free and ready to speak to them. Sometimes they do come when I'm busy, so I will ask them to hold that energy, and I might make a couple of notes on my phone or something and email myself. So when they come to me, it feels like it just feels like an opening up of my energy fields, like everything is expanding, everything is getting bigger, and then I see the communication. So I'll either see them as the 9, or I will see that sacred geometric presentation. So for example, when I wrote my books, I would see like a geometric structure, a geometric light structure that was the download. So it's like that's the 9, but it's the message the 9 have in this language of light, sacred geometry, encoded structure that I know is a monad. And I then have to decode that structure. So that will happen sometimes when it's a video, or mostly for the books, or sections of the book. I mean, with the first book, it was the whole book all in one monad. But there are other times when I say to them, I'd like to ask you a question, or I'd like to talk to you, or could you come through? And I will call them through. And there are occasions when I ask to talk to them and they're not there. Now that is usually if I am not in a balanced state myself. It's very difficult to connect with them. For example, if I'm feeling ill and I'm frightened for some reason, or if I allow my emotions to become very ego-centered, it's very difficult to make contact. You need to be in a balanced, open, loving state yourself to receive that energy. Because if you try and receive the energy in an unbalanced state or an angry state or some other negative emotion, then you are not going to bring forward a clear vibration. You will bring forward a vibration that mirrors the state of your emotion. So I always, well, it's not really about waiting until you're in a really good state to channel. The idea is to be in that state all the time. That doesn't mean you don't feel negative emotions. It means to work with those negative emotions, understand that they're there for a reason, work through them, integrate them. If you're doing that all the time, you're constantly in a communicative situation with that higher aspect of you, those higher guides. You'll always be able to call upon them and be in a state of flow so that they can come through, and be in a state of flow so that you can connect with them. So it's very rare that I'm not able to connect with them, but there has been the odd time when I haven't been able to reach them, and I've had to really sort of try to get into that balanced state to be able to connect. But most of the time, they're there.
Yeah. That's exactly what I want to talk about too, is that the alignment part of being, what does it take for us to get into alignment? And you've talked about rainbows, you've talked about chakras, being aligned, being balanced, so that we can access these better parts of ourselves as more fully activated essence of being, I guess. And when I have heard you talk about Kundalini a little bit, can you talk about Kundalini energy from your perspective, with the Nice perspective, a little bit?
Yes, I mean, it's my understanding that Kundalini is the energy rays within the body, but it is actually a physical essence, if you like a sort of a liquid light that resides at the base of our spine, that is activated and drawn up. And it comes up through the chakra system and then activates the third eye, the crown chakra. So it really is about drawing an energy upwards. That's the same thing as channeling. So you see, some people might find that they have a Kundalini experience. So they feel this energy raising up within them, or they feel their chakras opening. And it can be very slow and methodical and take weeks or months or years, or it can be very, very quick and occur over a period of hours. So they would perceive that as a Kundalini awakening. Other people may make a connection with a being or their guides or ascended masters or angels, either within meditation or in whatever state they may be in. That's also a Kundalini awakening. It's all the same thing. It's all about activating the energy body and moving into a state of expansion. But it's how we perceive it is different. So some of us perceive it as channeling guides, others perceive it as raising energy, others perceive it as a Kundalini awakening, a chakra upgrade, a DNA activation, a download, an upload. So these different ways of perceiving this energy is simply the way the third dimensional interface, which is the brain, is making sense of these higher dimensional coded frequencies, this coded language. So it's important that we perceive it in our own unique way, but ultimately it's all the same thing. It's simply us being able to tune in to multi-dimensions at the same time and translate the coded information, the coded language within those dimensions, and translate them into a form that makes sense to us in this physical dimension, the third dimension.
Yeah.
So
Well, thank you. There's I don't know that there's an answer to this, but I have this burning desire to ask you. If you were to say that there was do you feel like there's an ultimate state of being that we are moving towards when I think about the last series you did, the Silver Solstice series, you talked about us getting into complete alignment, and you've spoken about accessing these superpowers in a way, like being more clairaudient or clairvoyant. And so let's say we get all of that activated inside of us. Do you think the 9 has an intention, or that there is an ultimate aspect of being human that we want to get to, or what would that look like? What would maybe transcendence look like? Or do you feel like there's an ultimate goal for us learning all that we can from multi-dimensional energy? That makes sense?
yes, I mean, I would say that if you have activated these things and you are downloading higher energy or communicating, or you've been through a Kundalini experience or whatever you call it, and you've activated clairvoyance and clairaudience and all those things, then ultimately, from that point of view, the goal would be for you to get into this sort of central point of your activation, which is 0 point, known as the now moment. So you would take that philosophy of wherever I am now is where I am meant to be. And so when you get to that point, you realize there is no goal, there is no destination, I am already there. But whilst you take that philosophy, that knowing, I'm already there, I have already achieved this expansive state. But you also need to hold the awareness within the third dimension that you may not be at that evolved state within your third dimensional life, certainly not 24/7. So in answer to your question, one answer would be we're already there. Especially the activated ones, we're already there, we've let go of the goal, we've let go of the journey, we are there. And it's important for us to know this and to feel that, because that's how we manifest that energy right throughout the third dimension and make these upgrades and changes within the physical dimension. So it's important for us to know that. But if we only know that, if we sit there and say, well, I'm already there is no destination, I've done it, I'm in that energy, it's just everything's perfect. If you stay there, then you aren't then drawing that energy down into the third dimension and taking the action needed to be able to progress forward. So on the one hand, we're already there, but from the point of view of the third dimension, where we are on a journey and we are progressing, then the idea would be to aim to get to the 0 point, but really not just a philosophy that we've read somewhere or we've heard someone say, but really to get there. And we can do this in many, many ways, but one way of doing this is to visualize that central point that I'm talking about. To know that there are many directions that this sacred geometry, that this activation can take within us. And this sacred geometry is like an external presentation in our mind of our DNA field, of our template, of our DNA template. So if we visualize this in different directions that would all stand for different time periods. So there's up, which is the higher energy, the over soul, the overworld, the upper world, the heaven realms, and then there's down into the anchoring, the depths, the underworld, the dark forest, all just as positive. So we have up, we have down, we have forward, which is the future, we have backward, behind, which is the past, then we have sideways, left to right, which is the quantum world, and all the choices that we could have made, or all the choices we did make but that we are not consciously experiencing. And then the diagonal direction that comes down from left to right, which would signify the ancestral line that we hold within us, our connection to our bloodline and to our ancestors. And we see this grid around us, and we know that all these different directions are different places we can go to within this sort of Merkaba travel, if you like. And then we take this central point, which we can call the pivot point, as a pivot, because all these different directions move in different ways. That central point is also the 0 point. We can take that as our core. So we would bring that into the solar plexus chakra, raise that up into the heart chakra. It's simply just one way of finding that 0 point balance. So that would be the goal to get to, and yet be aware that we are already there. But there are many ways to move into that awareness. We can do it through Merkaba work and light body work, chakra work. And we don't even have to do this through a spiritual visualization. We can do this physically through yoga or Tai Chi or other forms of dance. We can do this through creativity. We can do this through certain religions. It's all about balance and awareness, expansion and love, all kind of simultaneously wrapped up into this moment of unity where we know we are all things. That would be the ultimate goal, to be separate and embrace unity simultaneously. That's the ultimate goal of this journey.
So, yeah. So when you talked about the rainbow bridge, or the rainbow effect, what does that mean in relationship to like Merkaba travel or astral projection? Do you think that there's a correspondence between those two? When I think about transcendence, I think about a rainbow. And I don't know if that's because of the downloads I've had or things I'm seeing in the media or art through history, but I feel like there is a direct connection to that and our chakras. Is that true?
Yes. Yes. Well, the rainbow bridge is a metaphor, although one could also hold a literal counterpart if one is looking at the brain, the right and the left hemisphere of the brain, and the corpus callosum, the central point of the brain that connects the two hemispheres together. But metaphorically, one could see that as the stepping stone, the transition period between this point and this point. So the rainbow bridge is the bridge that joins you between the physical dimension and the higher dimensions. But rainbow is also the chakras, because we perceive the chakras within a third dimensional linear sense as individual energy points within our body, but ultimately they are one unified energy point. And as we move forward into this higher dimensional way of thinking, we will feel more and more like the merge of the chakras. So instead of the chakras being, you know, red, yellow or orange and all these different separate colors, the chakras will be a rainbow. And then you could also look at the rainbow as the DNA. The DNA is the rainbow, the inner rainbow within. So you asked if they were connected to astral travel, and yes, astral travel is really very much about being aware and conscious and being able to analyze in a conscious way whilst one is predominantly using the subconscious mind, either when one is asleep or in deep meditation. So that also would be Merkaba travel. Merkaba travel is really astral projection, but in a conscious sense, because you know that you have activated these sacred geometries, the light body, these different directions that I was talking about, which I call the sacred wheel. All of these things are connected. They all are really the same thing. But again, we perceive these different methods of spiritual discipline, we translate them as different things in order to make sense of them, because the brain sees everything as separate, and that's not a bad thing. It's a very, very good thing. We need to see things as separate, otherwise all we are seeing is a unified joining, and we can't make sense of that unified joining. So we compartmentalize that unified joining in order to make sense of it. But if we only see the pieces, we can't join everything together and see the bigger picture. So we must do both, and that again is this whole journey, this enlightenment or ascension, or, you know, activating the rainbow effect. The Nine use that term to describe what happens when you look at, say, this planet Earth collectively. So say you've got all these light workers, all these star seeds, all these individuals that have activated their inner rainbow, and they understand about the unified chakra system, and they're working with multidimensional thinking and open-hearted unconditional love. When you look at these individuals from a viewpoint, an expanded viewpoint that is outside of Earth, when you look down upon the planet and see all these activated individuals, their light joins together to form this rainbow. So we, even though we are individual people, like I'm individual as Magenta Pixie and you're individual as well, we're individual beings, from the higher perspective, we are joined as one being, just like the chakras are individual energy centers that become one. We are one. When the higher beings look down at planet Earth, they see this beautiful rainbow, and every time we awaken, every time one more person awakens to multidimensional thinking, they add their light to that rainbow. So there's many ways of looking at it.
I love that. I love that visual. Thank you. It's something when you're talking up to my head. I think that there's a lot of fear for people looking into this kind of these topics that we're discussing right now. Do you think that there is any part of this, or part of astral projection or Merkaba travel, that could be dangerous in any way to us?
Yes,
forces that are kind of like waiting for us out there somewhere.
If an individual has not worked with that shadow aspect of themselves, so they are perhaps quite traumatized, they haven't dealt with past trauma, they are getting triggered all the time with those traumas by life, and that they are a hurt person, an angry person, and they're in the middle of all of that, and then they suddenly come across this philosophy and decide, I'm going to activate my Merkaba, then I'm not saying it would necessarily be dangerous, because there is a fail-safe program within individuals, within starseeds. There's a lot of guidance, but what it could be is temporarily confusing and disconcerting, and potentially it could take that person into a situation where they become even more confused than they were, and it might affect their way of thinking, it might affect their mental stability, their emotional stability. Having said all that, the minute somebody attempts to step into this energy, that, in inverted commas, protection, if you like, and that whole word brings a whole other you know, connotation with it, but that is given. The guidance is given along with the sort of stumbling blocks. It's like if you look at a child, is it dangerous for that child to learn to walk? Well, yes, because if they fall over and hit their head, they're going to hit their head, and they might walk into something, an object that's going to hurt them. They might fall down the stairs if there isn't a parent around to catch them. But the point is, most of the time, let's hope, there's a parent around to catch them. So it's kind of like that. We're all babies taking those steps. We don't know what we're doing or what we're going to bump into, but there's a parent around, and that is the higher guidance. Because the minute you try to walk, that energy matches you the minute you try. So the answer to is it dangerous is kind of yes and no. Would I advise somebody who has just stumbled across this information and has done absolutely no work at all on themselves? Well, if that person is naturally a loving, kind person who's always been a good person, always tried to help others, I'd say yes, you do this, because you're already there with your niceness and your goodness, if you like. But for somebody who is not there and very traumatized and troubled, but then it's unlikely that that person will stumble into this work. Everything is kind of connected together. I'm not saying that it wouldn't, because on the one hand, there is a order to things. It's like everything's meant to be. If you're someone who's deeply buried in shadow and you try to activate the Merkaba, then you're supposed to be doing that because you decided to do that before you were born. And any trauma you might go through because of your early Merkaba activation is all part of your journey anyway. But having said that, there's also the third dimensional perspective. Should you give a Ouija board to 8 drunk students who are all having a great old time at a party and think conjuring up a spirit might be fun? Well, the answer's no. That doesn't mean that they weren't meant to do it, because it leads them to whatever discovery or lesson that they're supposed to learn. So there's lots and lots of ways of answering that question from many different perspectives. But your answer really about it, your question about it being dangerous, if you are already on this path, you are a good, loving person, you are in surrender to the desire to want to help others in whatever way you can, that in itself is the key to moving into Merkaba activation. And for you, no, it will not be dangerous. It will be beautiful. So
yeah, that makes sense. That makes a lot of sense. Yeah, so that you know would call for, I guess, more motivation to become more aligned and activated, or to try to do things in a way that would upgrade your DNA on a regular basis, so that you could have these more explorative or profound experiences when you're going into meditations or you're trying to access the other dimensions, right?
Yeah, what I would say there is the key there is don't try too hard, because if you're thinking to yourself, okay, I'm going to really try to activate my Merkaba on my light body, and I'm going to spend X amount of time in meditation, and I'm going to do it, and then nothing kind of happens. If you try too hard and you have this huge expectation of this amazing spiritual journey, you can lock yourself into this spiral where you're manifesting energy in your life that mirrors you trying too hard. And that can be, the match can be nothing happening, or failure, or feeling like you've missed out in some way. The key here is to absolutely relax, and when you go into this, you don't mind whether anything happens or not. So there's no expectation. And so you say to yourself, I would love to make a connection with a higher being, or activate my Merkaba, or activate my DNA, and that would be wonderful. However, if that doesn't happen, I'm absolutely fine with that as well, whatever happens. And remember that whatever happens to you in that meditation is the right thing. So you might be speaking to all these beings within minutes, chatting away to you about these amazing quantum scientific philosophies, or you might just simply see the colour purple, or feel a nice floaty feeling. Whatever happens is right. So don't try too hard, don't have any expectations, go with the flow, and things will happen.
Thank you. Okay, one last question. What would it look like or feel like to have a DNA upgrade? What would you have? Would you have more access to something, or would you feel more confidence, or what do you think that feels like in a three-dimensional body?
Well, there can be lots and lots of symptoms, if you like, of DNA upgrade. On a physical level, you can feel tingling in the body. You can hear like a tinnitus or a buzzing in your ears. You can feel quite spaced out and dizzy, but that would be a lightheaded, but there'd be a nice feeling with it. It shouldn't feel bad. You shouldn't feel ill with it. So there are lots and lots of different physical sensations, but you can't put everything down to DNA activation. I've seen people do this. So somebody will be getting vertigo, let's say, that's a big one. And then other people say, oh, that's fine, it's DNA activation, it's ascension syndrome. Well, what if it's not? What if it's multiple sclerosis or an inner ear imbalance? So one must take both viewpoints always. A, this could be DNA activation and ascension syndrome. B, this could be a health issue. Let's go see a medical doctor or a holistic doctor or whatever you need to do. Work on all levels with that. So there are physical symptoms, but really the most common symptoms of DNA upgrade is the way you think and feel emotionally rather than within the physical body. Obviously it's all connected, but if you are seeing beings, if you are hearing the beings talking to you, or you're translating energy, or you're having downloads or uploads, or your dreams are coming true, or you've got tons of synchronicity going on in your life, these are all symptoms of DNA upgrade. You might be seeing the master numbers like 1111 or 444 or 1212. All of these things happen, but these things happen to everyone anyway, even if they haven't necessarily upgraded their DNA. The difference is the perception. So say someone is seeing 1111, but without the awareness of DNA upgrade, if you like, they may ignore that. So they won't remember that they saw 1111. They won't tie up the fact that they saw 1111 every day that week. But suddenly, when they do realise and think, that's strange, I've seen 1111 every day this week, but you know, it's like something's looking at me. Bang, we've got DNA activation going on. The realisation, the epiphany of tying everything up. A, that's a symptom of DNA activation, and B, that in itself is a trigger to DNA activation, because the trigger and the symptom are one and the same thing because they're happening simultaneously. So you can create DNA activation, but it may well be that you've been DNA activated for years and you've only just realized it. And these things come together. So anyone who is experiencing any of those things I said, talking to beings, having recurring dreams, having meaningful dreams, becoming clairvoyant, and it's happening repeatedly, and with it there is a sense of belonging, a sense of purpose, or very much this sense of, there's something I'm here to do, but I'm not quite sure what it is, but I've always known I'm here for a reason. That is in itself DNA awareness. And the majority of the light workers and the starseeds have had that gene within them that lets them know that they're here to do something and that there's something they need to do. That will have been switched on pretty much since birth, because you can't come into an incarnation with everything shut off. There's got to be something that's left online. So it will be, rather than it being, I have a memory and I remember this memory and I know who I am or who I was or what I'm supposed to do, it's more like there's something I need to remember. What is it? That comes with your incarnation if you're a starseed. You'll always know that there's something you're looking for, something you're meant to do, something you're meant to remember, somewhere you're meant to be, a group of people you're meant to meet. That will have been there since the beginning. And that's DNA activation online from incarnation, birth point.
Yeah. Fabulous. Well, you're such a good, well-spoken teacher.
Thank you.
Thank you. I feel like your message and the way that you've articulated all these really big, abstract concepts for a lot of people are going to be able to be understood in a really clear and concise way.
Yeah, because it's not always easy to bring down those higher dimensional perceptions and explain them in a way that is clear and that makes sense. That's not necessarily an easy thing to do, and I guess I've been training to do that for all my life, because I started talking very, very young and started doing drama training when I was about 9, and all of these things have helped me to be able to articulate and communicate. But obviously at the time I didn't know what for. I didn't realize I'd be translating higher dimensional code. But yeah, so
very cool.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. Magenta, would you like to tell us about the gifts you have to offer?
Yes, I'm offering 9 meditations, free guided meditations channeled by me from the 9. 8 of them are already for sale on my website, so I'm offering those for free. But there is one meditation that is from my first book, Masters of the Matrix, that isn't for sale, so that's an exclusive meditation for this special offer, and that's the Library of Records. It's from my first book. It's a nice meditation. So 9 guided meditations altogether.
Fabulous, great. And we'll have that link below too.
We are now at a time in our planetary evolution known as ascension. Those individuals we can call starseeds are currently in their millions and are collectively going through this awakening process. In this book, the 9 bring forward memory triggers designed to act as a catalyst into the awakening process. They present a model of working with the individualized matrix field, known also as the Merkaba, through matrix architecture, Merkaba magic, and the golden triad of ascension, presenting an in-depth analysis and explanation of the twin flame consciousness and how this relates to the ascension, as well as providing triggers to the collective memory experience known as Atlantis. This transmission is designed to trigger your multidimensional memory as you begin the construction of the Merkaba matrix and embrace the inner archetype of the architect. The triggers contained within this material are there to assist you in accessing the codes for the new formation of the original crystalline DNA matrix. I, Magenta Pixie, am so happy to present this transmission to you from the White-Winged Collective Consciousness of 9. Divine Architecture and the Starseed Template.